Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. What killed Napoleon's army? Scientists find clues in DNA from fallen soldiers' teeth. By 1812, Napoleon was all-powerful. Nearly all of Europe was under his control. He had succeeded in forbidding most of the continent from trading with Britain in an effort to bring the island nation to heel. And he was married to Marie Louise, daughter of the Emperor of Austria, a major superpower at the time. The dazzling emerald and diamond necklace that he gifted her when they were wed was one of the objects stolen in last weekend's heist at the Louvre. But the Russian Empire had been resisting his efforts to cut off all trade with Britain. That summer, he ordered his army, some 600,000, strong, to invade Russia. It would prove to be a terrible decision. This is the most infamous military campaigns in the last centuries, says Nicholas Raskovin. The head of the microbial paleogenomics unit at the Pasteur Institute of Paris. He believed that he was going to be able to conquer the whole world, more or less. It was probably the beginning of the end. In October, Napoleon called his soldiers back after barely engaging. With the Russian army. It wasn't a defeat, but it was no win either. And during the march home, winter arrived early. They started to die of cold, hunger, and also infectious disease. Says Raskovin, all told, hundreds of thousands perished. In a new study published in the journal Current Biology, Raskovin and his colleagues say those diseases likely include two unexpected pathogens that would have helped hasten the soldiers' demise. Continued with earlier work, it became clear that these men were under microbial assault on all fronts. These wars were anything but glamorous, says Michaela Binder, a bioarchaeologist with Novitas. An archaeological company based in Vienna, who wasn't involved in the study. For some of them, the death in battle would have been a relief. A rich and bloody history reconstructed. Typhus and trench fever have long been thought to be among the afflictions that Napoleon soldiers suffered. This is based on a mix of historical accounts and the discovery of body lice on the remains of soldiers, which carried the pathogens that transmitted the ailments. The DNA analysis conducted nearly a decade ago but molecular techniques have improved dramatically since then. And so a pair of archaeologists asked Raskovin, who studies the DNA of ancient pathogens, to see what other afflictions he might be able to turn up in the remains of a mass grave in Lithuania. The site had been discovered accidentally during a construction project. In one of the northern suburbs of Vilnius in 2001. Two to 3,000 of Napoleon's men had been buried there soon after they died. Europe has such a rich history that we have archaeological sites pretty much everywhere, says Raskovin. So you can dig a hole in the ground, and then you find something. An Imperial Guard button was discovered when the mass grave was excavated. Among the remains that the archaeologists had unearthed were 13 teeth, each with a different soldier, from a different soldier. These teeth had blood flowing through their interiors long ago. If you have DNA of the pathogen in the blood because you have an infection, that DNA can get into the tooth, explains Raskovin. So then it's kind of a time machine in which you can really see the blood of the individual back then. Only after decontaminating the teeth, grinding them into powder, and dissolving the bone dust, could the ancient DNA be studied. But naturally, that genetic code was in rough shape. It consisted of super short fragments that had undergone chemical changes. Raskovin sequenced all of it. Some of the genetic material came from the soldiers themselves. some of it derived from organisms in the soil in which they were buried. Some of it, perhaps, were some of the pathogens that helped kill these men. Once we have a huge list of all the different things that have been detected, we try to find which are the species that human pathogen, he says. It's like doing a puzzle. A story of hardship. After Raskovin and his team finished that puzzle, they had 2 hits. Both of them were bacteria. One that had caused paratyphoid fever, and the other relapsing fever. A pathogen transmitted by body lice that dated back to the Iron Age. This paper shows clearly how complex these types of analyses are, and the extreme level of skill required to work with these types of data, says Leslie Quad, a paleontologist at the Austrian Archaeological Institute who didn't participate in the research. She says that discerning emergence, spread, and evolution of diseases in the past can also help us navigate the pathogens of today. Understanding how certain types of pathogens developed can give us a better chance of anticipating what a pathogen's next step might be, says Quad. In addition, if a certain widespread pathogen has become rare today, these infection-laden historical events may offer lessons to learn to keep it from returning and contain other similar modern pathogens. These findings are another reminder that war has always been ugly. Binder says, "We have these paintings in the museums of soldiers in shiny armors, of Napoleon on his horse, fit young men marching into battle. But in the end, we look at human remains. We see an entirely different picture," she says. It's a picture of lifelong malnutrition, broken feet from marching too far, too quickly, and bodies riddled with disease. Their bones tell a story of hardship, says Binder. Why the ACA needs young people, and the looming death spiral for health insurance. Chloe Chalakani is an entrepreneur who runs a handmade pasta business with her partner in coastal Maine. The government shutdown fight affects how much she'll pay for health insurance next year. Chloe Chalakani has a lot at stake in the healthcare fight at the heart of the government shutdown. Chalakani runs a small culinary business with her partner in the coastal town of Thomaston, Maine. As temperatures drop and the height of her busy tourist season winds down, she's hitting her list of fall administrative tasks, including health insurance enrollment. She uses CoverMe.gov, the Affordable Care Act marketplace in Maine, also known as Obamacare. Her options in 2026 are looking grim. My premium is already $460 a month, and that is for the highest deductible plan that exists, she says. She's 31 years old and fairly healthy. Extra financial help with premiums is the form of enhanced tax credits, expires in December, and rates are going up. I don't plan to get insurance next year, she says. I'm just not going to do it. I'll pay out of pocket. The prospect of young people dropping out of the ACA markets worries health policy experts, not just because of their own personal risk of going uninsured, but because the effect that millions of people making the same decision could have on the whole health system. How insurance works. Health insurance markets only function when there are lots of people pooling their resources, young and old, relatively healthy and not. You need people to be paying into the insurance system when they're healthy so that they can take out when they're sick, explains Cynthia Cox of CFF. A nonpartisan health research organization. Younger, healthier people tend to pay more into the system than they consume in health care. Older people, sicker people, often consume an amount of health care that costs more than the amount they pay in. That dynamic creates a stable insurance system. Right now, the Affordable Care Act seems to be pretty balanced. A record 24 million people are enrolled, and brokers report their clients are generally happy with their plan options and find the premiums affordable. That may be about to change. Premiums costs will soon explode for many consumers because of the expiration of certain federal subsidies that kept these monthly costs low. It's the issue of the heart of the current federal shutdown. Democrats want the subsidies to be extended. Republicans say those negotiations shouldn't be part of the government funding debate. The dreaded death spiral. If Congress does not extend the federal subsidies set to expire in December, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that 4 million people will become uninsured in the next several years. The people who opt to go without insurance will probably be younger and healthier, Cox says, because sicker, older people will be more motivated to keep their coverage. Even if that means paying a lot more each month. It's easy to find people who fit these profiles. Chalikani, a 31-year-old in Maine, plans to skip coverage, while a 64-year-old in West Virginia, who needs expensive medications, tells NPR she's saving up money now to pay $2,800 every month for her coverage next year. If you only have sick people buying health insurance plans, then the average cost of that plan is going to be very high, Cox says. The concern is that the least sick person in that group is going to drop their coverage because it becomes unaffordable. And then the next year, the least sick person in that group might drop their coverage because it becomes unaffordable, and on and on. This is what's called a death spiral for an insurance market, she explains. Premiums get so high that the sickest of the sickest people are enrolled. And eventually, insurance companies are not just going to want to participate in a market like that. It's just not going to function. Although it is a relatively small portion of Americans who buy these plans, it has the potential to hurt everyone. Regardless of how they're insured. If more people in the country become uninsured, that's hard on hospitals and healthcare access. If hospitals face a lot of financial strain from having a lot more uninsured patients coming through the doors, then they might start changing the services they offer. They might have to close the maternity ward. They might have to close it down altogether. That's already starting to happen in Maine and other parts of the country, where healthcare markets are under financial pressure. And that pressure is increasing with looming cuts to Medicaid from President Trump's budget law that are expected to increase the number of uninsured people by millions more. Open enrollment is November 1st. Weeks into the shutdown, federal lawmakers have apparently not started negotiations to overcome the stalemate. The two sides have been at impasse since October 1st. Meanwhile, open enrollment is coming on November 1st. In Idaho, it's already begun. Unless Congress acts quickly, enrollees will likely have sticker shock when they log in to find a plan in 2026. For average, consumers will have to pay double next year for the same plan. Entrepreneurs like Chloe Chalakani are among the 24 million Americans who get their insurance through ACA. Chloe Chalakani says she plans to go uninsured, even though she knows that car accidents and serious illnesses can happen. Should a catastrophe happen, I'll probably say, wow, I should have had insurance. She says, but at this point, I don't have the financial ability for that. If lawmakers do overcome the impasse and extend the enhanced subsidies so that her premiums stay about the same, she says she might reconsider her plan to go without health insurance in 2026.